this is the big story. And I have with me in the studio, Hamuda Musibodi. Good to have you here once again.
Thank you so much for having me, Samson.
I want to unpack the bottlenecks. Let's talk about the real issues. What exactly is wrong with Nigerian refineries? And why are we here? How did we get here? Since all these refineries were commissioned to stream, what exactly has been the problem?
Oh, well, thank you again. First, if we take, the historical path from, the Port Harcourt refinery, in 63, I think, and then, other refineries, the other 4 refineries that followed. Most time people say we have 4 refineries. Actually, we have 5. The only thing is that the 5th one is only does conversion from crude, to diesel, and just 1,000 barrels per day for local production. But if you look at it really, one thing that is clear is that these refineries were set up with socialist intentions. Socialist intentions in the sense that they were set up to help relieve the burden. So the subsidy era was integral to the establishment of these refineries. Now, when these refineries were set up, by the time, by the 80s, okay, when of course we had the last refinery, what we saw was that the infrastructure of these refineries, okay, began to wear off. Don't forget the first was in the 60s, the second was in the 70s. But by the 90s, because of long years of abandonment of these infrastructures, it is normal that when you have infrastructures like these and they are not serviced, they are not properly taken care of, monies are allocated for those infrastructure, but those monies are not utilized properly, you would have a situation where they would experience wear and tear. Now, having experienced wear and tear, for instance, if you get this table, and you're supposed to clean it, so you're going to pay someone, it's going to be part of your overhead cost, someone who will be taking care of the table. But you chose not to take care of the table. Maybe you even allocate money for taking care of the table. But then someone somewhere, decides to circumvent that money or, siphon the money, and no one takes care of the table. By the time the state of the table begins to worsen, you will need to spend more. Now, it becomes worse where and when, at that point where you now need to spend on it, some persons have seen it as a conduit pipe or a cash cow for them. And so, all the monies allocated for it are not utilized. So what we have seen is, in the case of the NNPC, and of course revamping those refineries, has been a case of willful intentionality not to ensure that these refineries are back to life.
Okay, let me quickly ask you this. Were these refineries built to work optimally, or there were strategic structural defaults from the beginning?
No, there were no strategic structural defaults from the beginning. These refineries were working perfectly well up to the 90s. They were producing optimally. The problem we started with, the wave of the Niger Delta militancy, or not started, worsened with the wave of the Niger Delta militancy, which saw to the fact that some of those refineries, particularly the 2 Port Harcourt refineries and the Warri refineries, were almost subject of attacks. Okay, and so people were, a lot of times people now felt, oh, let's not go there, for fear of life. But then the truth is, those refineries are not working because some persons who have seen it as a cash cow
are sabotaging.
Yes, are intentionally, willfully sabotaging the efforts to revamp those refineries. Because, hey, let's look at it this way. In infrastructural restructuring or infrastructural reconstruction, before a contractor takes a job, he would have done what we call a feasibility studies.
Absolutely.
Now, the feasibility studies will tell him, okay, if this thing is going to be repaired, it's going to work. Right? Now, the engineer would have done all of that, the contractor would have done all of that. have we ever asked ourselves, where is the report of the engineer, the post-repairs report? So why is it the case that every time we say, oh, this, for instance, during the Buhari years, we saw how Mele Kyari was telling us, oh, there was turnaround maintenance and now they are back to life, and only for them to go, back to the afterlife after just, few weeks. So where is the report of the engineers telling us, because the engineers need to be held accountable. If I get a technician to fix something for me, and then that thing is still giving me the same issues, what do? I should return. In fact, most times, when you give contractors to engineers like that, okay, engineers like this, there would always be post-repairs maintenance, where they will come around maybe for a period of a year or two to keep giving service or servicing of those infrastructures. So when they come and say, oh, these refineries are not working, I've said this several times, somewhere, and I've said that if you also look at the body language of Nigerian leaders, go and look from the 60s, particularly from the 80s upward. This is what Nigerian leaders do. They want to go this path. They know that if they say they want to go this path, you are all going to shout. So what do? They will follow this path and make it problematic, make you suffer. And in the midst of the groaning and murmuring, you now say, see, maybe we should go this path, which is what they had always wanted. Look at what they did with subsidy. They started, did you notice that as soon as the subsidy regime was gone, scarcities suddenly disappeared? The scarcities were not there because the subsidies were there.
Were they artificial?
They were artificial scarcities.
Genuinely created by the government.
It was, see, I have always said this. I believe that there are not necessarily government, but some persons in government who are feeding fat off this scheme.
So are you saying the cabal in the oil system?
Definitely, there are cabals who know that as soon as we fix this, what is happening with our power, our power sector? If your power sector is working, there will be no need for you. All the generator importers are gone. The only reason why the solar business is thriving now is because the power sector has failed. So there are those in that sector who know that, oh, the collateral damage will be that this sector must not work. And that's the same thing with the petroleum industry. So these persons know that was even before the coming of Dangote. And you would also see this. Now, to lend credence to this, you saw the big bats between these characters and Dangote when Dangote came on board.
And he stood his ground.
Okay? And Dangote stood his ground, knowing how well to play his propaganda. Grandstanding also as the messiah of the people. But the point is this. The whole drive, the whole work towards making sure our refineries do not work is simply to ensure that they are sold. Now, when those refineries are sold, who will buy it? Am I the one?
Still the same set of people.
So it's still going to be the same set of people, and then they'll be feeding fat. Oh, why has it been difficult? Let's just use the one we can relate with. Why has it been difficult for Dangote, for instance, to come up and tell us this is the unit cost per liter of
He once made an attempt to buy some of the Nigerian refineries.
No, I mean, has he come out to tell us this is the unit cost of, this is what it costs to produce a liter of petrol, so that we know its profits? And so he can play the price war with these characters by suddenly reducing 100 naira, in the cost of PMS, and then suddenly jacking it up. After the people are taught to themselves that, oh, this man is our savior, blah, 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 blah. You see, what we are seeing now play out is nothing but a capitalist drive. The attempt to ensure that the people have no respite whatsoever in every sense of the word. Because it is not rocket science. And you see these characters, the likes of, the like of Obasanjo and even Ojulari and others, who have been saying, no, we need to sell these refineries. Okay, government has no business in business.
I was about to ask you, Was the reversal of the privatization under Umar Musa Yar'Adua administration a missed opportunity or was a necessity to protect national interest?
It was even needless in the first place. It was needless. How do you say you are privatizing and then you are selling to your cronies? What kind of the people have no stake. We are not the only oil producing country in the world. And I give an example. You see, before you begin to, because the world all over has come to understand that capitalism is a danger. It's a dangerous trend. And so people are already looking for a kind of a hybrid system. PPP. Public-private partnership. Where the government will still have a stake in all of this. Because the government will always look out for the interests of the people. The interest of Dangote is not the interest of the people.
But some say it's the Messiah.
Which Messiah?
That has come to turn around.
And okay, so why did this Messiah, what kind of Messiah is it? He has to increase it back to by 100 naira again. The first thing for a capitalist is ensuring that his marginal utility equals to his price. That's when he's going to break even. So the first thing on his mind is maximization of profit. Dangote does not owe my father anything. He does not owe anybody's father anything. So he has no business, no duty to anyone, no duty of care to anyone to ensure that he provides. So he is providing for Dangote, is providing PMS because he's making profits.
Okay, is the indecision between privatization and state control, has it made the issue of these refineries, has it made it worse?
Yeah, it has kind of made it worse, particularly because government itself is confused. You know, I mentioned PPP earlier. Now, those refineries could work if the private sector has a stake in it. I'm a socialist, but I'm not a blind socialist. Okay, I would not say, oh, government, oh, should, you know, government alone. We have not gotten to that point in our life, okay, where we say we leave it to government, particularly with these leeches, you know, that are found in government. I give the example of, you know, Saudi Arabia's Aramco. And hey, let me say this as well. Many have also been deceived into believing that the problem is with us as Nigerians or our Nigerianness. There's nothing wrong with our Nigerianness. What is wrong is the lack of responsibility of those who are in government, our policy makers. These characters are all out for themselves. So instead of doing the needful, they will always, what will drive them or what has been driving them has been their self-interest. And when your self-interest drives you, you can be sure that you will not perform optimally and efficiently too. So these refineries have refused to work because these persons have not placed the interests of Nigeria and Nigerians above self-interest.
Okay, as it is now, let's talk about the NNPC. The way it is currently structured, can the NNPC successfully run a commercial refineries? Or these are just unrealistic, you know? Of
course, isn't that the whole idea behind the whole nnpcl? It is. So you see, when you run, I always say this, the business of government is to do the business of government. And the business of government is doing business. So when people come and say, oh, government has no business in business, it's a lie. It's a lie. And Nigerians are very funny. We do double speak a lot. So Nigerians are saying government needs to intervene in the housing sector because of the rising cost of, you know, housing and, you know, accommodation. Yet you are saying government has no business in business. Nigerians are saying government needs to intervene in the rising cost of transportation. Yet you are saying government should have no business in business. Nigerians are saying the cost at which they get, you know, procure their data is high. Yet you are saying government has no business in business.
So the government has a say in any
government has a business in business.
Okay.
Because if government will duly protect the interests of its people, then it must have a business in business.
Now, very quickly, I want us to talk about this particular statement credited to Bayo Julari. I said Nigeria will just be wasting money if we continue to maintain these refineries. In fact, his claim makes us understand the fact that these refineries have gone moribund. Now, as it stands, where does that statement put the Nigerian refineries? this administration, and definitely NNPCL as a body?
I think the first thing is that Bayo Ojulari's...
Are we seeing the first time where someone has come to tell Nigerians the truth to their faces?
I believe that, number one, Bayo Ojulari's statement is an admittance of failure. And it simply means that he ought, if he actually has any modicum of integrity, he ought to have resigned. He ought to have resigned.
Why so?
Yeah, because if you are saying that Nigeria cannot manage the refineries, okay, so what are you doing as the CEO? So, because obviously if we sell to the private sector, if we sell these refineries to the private sector...
It will work.
Well,
it will not be turned to a museum anyway.
Well, at least a Bayo Ojulari's position will no longer be needed. Or is he going to be the chairman of their board? Will he? So, it's an admittance of guilt. It's an admittance of failure. And what the like of Bayo Ojulari, you know, and others are doing is essentially to create a soft landing for their, you know, imperialist and capitalist friends, so that it becomes a ground for them to sell over our infrastructure. Let's look at it this way. Many of us don't understand the danger we are living in. While we were growing up in Lagos, there used to be public corporation water corporation. So every house does not need to drill a borehole. Right? And that was one of the things that saved us. Many of us are complaining now that, oh, we don't even know whether we're in the dry season or in the rainy season. Oh, you see rain when you're already affecting the ozone layer with your activities. So now you go on the street and you see 30 houses, and each of the 30 houses drill the borehole, and you think that the earth's surface is not affected. I was on the island last week in Lagos, and I saw a certain street, about 40 houses, 3-story building. That was a list, 3-story building, and each of these houses had a borehole. God forbid, should there be an earthquake,
A tremor.
or a tremor, you can imagine what would happen, because the earth's surface is weak. So we killed all of that. We killed, NEPA is not functioning. Now that you have sold to PHCN, or the different
discos,
has there been improvements? Has there been improvement?
Government still has a stake in all of this when it comes to generation.
Definitely, government has a stake in generation, but in distribution, has there been any improvement? When we said, nitrogen is a problem.
We only distribute what is generated.
But then this private sector also has a stake. You see, my point is this. Now, look at the telecom sector. And this is totally deregulated, save for government oversight function. Yet Nigerians are groaning. So you buy data now. Some of us spend as much as maybe 20 to 30,000 naira on data monthly. Now, how many people can afford that? Okay, so you see people using their data in piecemeal. You know, Nigerians will turn off data while, and though I always laugh, like, when you turn on the data, all that is supposed to have done while you have turned it off.
It will definitely...
But then they feel that these are survival mechanisms. My point is this: you cannot leave everything to the private sector. If government is not there playing an oversight role, the people will be ripped off.
Okay, just like what you said now, if Nigeria eventually privatizes the refineries, is Nigeria intentionally or unintentionally creating an industry dominated by a few powerful people?
Definitely. And don't forget that...
and how disastrous is that?
This is a sector that affects every life. 99.9% of our cars run on fuel. So it means that you have created a wealthy platform for these individuals. And this is why some of us have said, no, it's not privatization. Why are we always shouting as if privatization is the only way? There are other measures we can explore, other means we can explore. Why have these characters been shouting privatization? Why have they not been talking about PPP? Because if you talk about privatization, so it means all that the government has spent so far on this infrastructure will go to waste. The only way they will recoup is how when they sell. So they will not be participating in the further profit down the line.
Okay, that brings us to this question. Has Nigeria lost control of its oil narrative, especially when it comes to pricing, supply, and public communication?
Well, to an extent, Nigeria seems to have, because if you look at it this way, our production has not been the same. It has not been up to par. In fact, meeting OPEC quota has been a problem. Okay, although under this administration there's been some stability, but then we do not have control over pricing. The Nigerian government does not have any control over pricing. With the removal of the subsidy regime, the essence of the subsidy regime was to create a cap that no one should sell above this cap so that it is affordable. Because we know that as soon as you exceed that cap, it's going to redound on everything now. The woman who is selling okra in a local market in Oyo State will need that fuel because she's going to transport her goods
from the village somewhere down to...
And the driver who bought the fuel will transfer it. So she's going to bear the incidence. And the person who will bear the final incidence, the burden, will be the final consumer. Now, that final consumer may also be someone who has a school, who runs a school. So she will transfer it on the school fees that the children will pay. Okay, the one who is paying high school fees has a house he built, and then will transfer it on those who take the apartment from him or her.
So
and so the circle begins to expand. That is why you cannot, anyone who follows the subsidy regime does not understand the dynamics, the chain effect. Some of us have always said this, and we would always maintain it, that removal of subsidy was nothing but a scam. Removal of subsidy was nothing but, a wrong policy. Why?
It was considered necessary at the time.
It was not necessary. What was the problem with the subsidy regime? You said people were taking our PMS to predatory neighbors. Something, is it your duty to man the borders? Is it my duty to man the borders?
That's the role of the government.
So why are you passing the burden of your failure on the ordinary masses? Because it is a failure of government to man the borders that has made it possible for smugglers to smuggle to other countries. Okay? So instead of doing the needful, we did not do the needful. Now, we do not have power over pricing. And when you do not have power over pricing, so imagine how many people, how many of the end users did Dangote consult with before he increased the price? So you are collecting a salary of, say, 70,000. Your employer did not anticipate there would be any increments. And then you go to work, and after getting your salary, there's an announcement by a certain Mr. Aliko Dangote that the price has been increased. So if you were spending 1,500 or say 2,000 on transportation earlier, if you do not have a car, then you are now spending about, because the driver who owns that public transport will also pass the burden. Right. Okay, now you have to spend 2,500. Okay, that is out of, so initially your transport fare for a month was 40,000. Now with 2,500, that is 12,500 in a week, and that makes it 50,000 in a month. So you are left with 20,000. Now that 20,000 that you are left with, the burden of that increase in transportation
also goes to food,
items. So if you were able to buy, say, a Congo of Gary before, a Congo of rice, all of these things also become affected. Those who are going to bear the burden are those who provide services.
Okay, just before we go, with the current structure in Nigeria, can Nigerians realistically expect price stability as things go on?
Now, price stability is a function. Price stability will only come where there is stability in, one, the international price of the product. There is even no stability in the international price of the product itself. So how do we expect price stability? You saw that at the point Dangote dropped 40 naira, at the point just because he wanted to outplay the importers. So price stability will not exist where there is price war, and we are still seeing price war at the moment. The only way that you can have price stability is if our refineries are working. And unfortunately, you would also notice the pattern. Those refineries did not start working until the subsidy regime was fully gone. So this whole attempt is to see how government will hands off the refineries, remove its financial obligations to those refineries, and then sell to the private sector and say, okay, that is off our neck. That is what government, we have been having this limitative government over time, limitative, democracy over time, where government's responsibilities are reduced. Okay. So what that also means is that workers in that sector will no longer be the business of government. And then you keep having serious litigations and, actions, strike actions, because those who are in that sector will ask government that they must be catered for.
Right.
Just as we have in the power sector.
So lastly, before we go, finally, do you think Nigeria's refinery crisis is a technical issue or a further exposure of Nigeria's inability to maintain a structured position when it comes to maintenance?
Well, I think it's both technical, and then there's also the human angle to it. Technical in let me start with the human angle. There is that lack of will. Where there is a will, there will be a way. But then we do not have that will. We do not have the will to. If we have a government today, if we have a president today who wants to see those refineries working, they will start working.
So it's about
Who
will.
would have thought that in Nigeria you can apply for your passport and get it within a week without having to cut corners?
So if there is a will in that sector, why not in other sectors?
Okay, so it's the same thing that cuts across boards.
It's something we'll discuss some other day, why some sectors get more attention than the other. Thank you, Nnpc Refineries, for joining us on this show this morning. It has been a wonderful session with you. The Nigerian Refineries Saga is no longer just about broken plans. It is about governance, policy direction, and national credibility. Whether the path forward is full privatizations or strategic partnerships, or maybe deep reform, one thing is clear. The current approach is unsustainable. And many thanks to my guest this morning, Nnpc, a researcher and public affairs analyst, for joining us on this important conversation. Samson Balogun is my name, and this has been The Big Story on Daybreak Live. Stay with us as we continue to ask questions that shape Nigeria's future. Up next is Trend Watch. We'll be back.